Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morin-van, and we're live with another episode of Strategy Talks, and we are going to talk about AI in a different way. I am sure you've heard enough prompts to make you go, whoa, but today we're talking about should you disclose AI usage and where and how and why, and maybe you shouldn't. So that's the discussion today. I have a wonderful guest, but before I introduce you to my guest, I want to welcome everybody who's here live. Let us know in the comments where you're joining us from. If you're watching this on the replay, put hashtag replay in the comments, and a special shout out welcome to those of you who join us via the podcast. Before I introduce you to today's guest, I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor, Social Insider. They are the intuitive dashboard for social media analytics, reporting, and competitors analysis for brands and agencies. If you need data, you need Social Insider. So without much further ado, here is today's guest, John Demer. How are you today, John?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I am great. It is so great to finally meet you. And for those of you who are listening, who are watching, sometimes I have guests on my show that I've talked to online forever, and they feel like friends, but we never actually met or had a one-on-one conversation. So John is somebody who's followed Strategy Talks, and he and I were talking about AI. And so we're trying something different today. If you're a listener or a watcher of this show, you know that John would be featured as the expert. Today, both of us are going to be sort of like the experts. We're going to talk about AI. Should we disclose usage? Should we not? How? Pros, cons, all of that stuff. And we want you, if you're watching live with us, to weigh in on this. So John, before we do that, let me just tell people who you are. You are a content strategist, a content creator, and a lover of data. And I love that part because, data is what we need in order to create the right content, right? It's like a little circle. You need to have all of those things in order to make it work together. I see somebody's here. Dale is here. And Dale says, John, are you using AI tools? That's a great question. John, what tools are you using?
Oh man, it depends on the task. I know that sounds kind of broad, but also I don't think that at this point in time, there's kind of one shoe fits all. Everyone would love to say that they can just put in the proper prompts and they can get any kind of output they want out of ChatGPT. But I really don't think that's the case. I think with the different large language models, you're getting kind of, different skill sets with each one. So yeah, it really does depend for a lot of content ideation. I really like Goblin tools as far as creating lists. As far as, developing those prompts, ChatGPT is pretty good. And then, obviously some couple automations with Zapier is good as well. So yeah, those are top 3 use cases.
All right. That's great. So let's jump into these questions. Why is the disclosure of AI usage a topic of debate right now? Why is this? What have you seen? Because the reason we're talking about this is because I've seen all different opinions, and I was super curious because you and I initially were supposed to talk about AI and content creation. And I went and said, hey, John, are you up for something different? So what are you seeing? Where are you seeing people divided?
So basically what I see is I see it from kind of 3 points of view. I see it from the point of view of the people who are developing the LLMs. I see it from the point of view of, traditional content creators or human to table content creators. And I see it from the perspective of people who are just looking to, streamline content. For people who are just looking to streamline content, obviously, it's easier. It's like auto-tune or special effects. Why would you need to disclose that you have special effects and transformers if everyone just kind of obviously knows it's special effects? From the position of traditional creatives, obviously they don't want people working faster than them. I'm not going to say as efficient as them, but they definitely have, stake in the game as far as like their market's about to become competitive or more competitive than it was. And from the position of the, people who are building these things, if you are feeding information into a large language learning model through like data scraping, which ChatGPT just kind of came out with, it was their GPT bot. If you're feeding information that was AI generated, you're eventually going to get muddled output. So from their point of view, they want you to disclose as well. And that's why they all kind of signed that recent disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let me add one more. How about the big corporations or businesses that hire content creators by the hour, and they hire a freelancer, and how do you stay up with that? I mean, I honestly believe that working for an hourly rate as an online creator is a little crazy. I mean, I've done it, and I do that for very special clients for special occasions, but most of the time I have retainers with my clients because how fast I do it, it's not about the hourly rate, it's about my knowledge and my experience that provides them with what they need. But if you're working with somebody who used to spend 3 or 4 hours working on a blog article, and you're paying them per hour instead of per word, that becomes different. Or if you're paying them per word and now the words get spewed out in about 2 minutes through AI, that becomes a different conversation, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of like Canva, right? So like everyone kind of jumped on the Canva train, and then people who know now can look at something and tell like which page of templates it came from. So you do things and you're like, oh man, I recognize that font.
Calling it out, John. I love it. That is absolutely right. You're right. Yeah.
Right now, you can kind of like, it's not going to be apparent to anybody who's not watching. But I can look at things and I can tell. I was like, there was a portion of that was AI generated. With video, it's going to get harder and harder because as of right now, like all AI generation for video is using stock footage. So you obviously get into some like copyright realms there, like usage rights. But eventually, it's going to get to the point where I think it's either going to get cost prohibitive, or it is going to be it's just not going to get the quality that you'd expect out of a human contractor. So with that being said, the hourly rate thing is a definite problem. But what I would say is that from the beginning, I've always heard that AI is not going to replace me, but someone using AI will. And that's kind of the thing that I hear. So yeah, it's gonna change the landscape, definitely.
Oh, I love that. AI is not going to replace me, but somebody who uses AI will. That's a very good forward think. No, that's great because, people hear things and they repeat things and they repeat the wrong things all the time. Oh, there's panic. And the thing that I want to kind of say right now is that we're, as marketers, and a lot of my audience right here on Strategy Talks are marketers. We're in this box. We're in this self-contained box of marketing. We think everybody knows about AI. There's a lot of people who don't know anything about AI, who aren't using it, who have no idea how much we're using it, how it's everywhere in the world. They don't know there's AI in Gmail when they're using it. They don't see it, right? But we are so aware that, like, I love that. So they're repeating, especially like, in the educational system, I think there's a lot of fear about AI. And have you seen that in marketing, that people are real fearful? Or
I would say the people who are fearful that I've come across are people who are absolute experts in one field. They're fast. They are, they are like Picassos of their trade, whatever they do. It could be graphic design. It could be videography. It could be, logo generation, whatever they are. The people who are afraid are the ones who see it doing something to 40% of what they do, and that makes them nervous. But obviously, as this stuff improves, it's gonna get faster. So I think in order for anybody, any creative, any person in marketing to kind of stay competitive in marketing, you're gonna have to learn how AI works. Like one of the things I had yesterday was I had talked to somebody about the rush for search engine optimization. Back in the day, everyone was hammering it, everyone was selling it, everyone wanted to make sure they were listed on Google. Well, the question now is, okay, how are you listed in the next large language model? How do you make sure that your information on your website is scraped in the next large language model? So I think that's going to be, just a giant shift. So yeah, you're gonna have SEO people, like, oh man, like SEO, like it's not worth much anymore. But also, it's just kind of as times change, you adapt, you learn new skills, you overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the pros of disclosing AI usage, right? Um, can it build trust if you tell clients and stakeholders, right? Can it position your company if you disclose it as innovative and forward thinking? What do you think about those? Are those pros?
You know what? I'd say it depends on how you use it. I know that a lot of people, a lot of creatives didn't like Coke's AI generated video. I don't remember the specifics of that video. I just remember seeing a lot of public backlash online about it. I don't know. What do you think?
So yeah, so that's interesting. So when a big company like Coke uses it,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's disappointing. I
Yeah.
honestly don't. Yeah, I mean, it's forward thinking to think that, oh, you can use it, but to have people see that that they can recognize it, yeah, that's a little disappointing.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that if you are a small marketing agency
Mm-hmm.
and you turn it as we're innovative, we're staying up with the changes, we are using the same tools we used before, but now they're integrated and they're using AI to get us more efficient, to then I think it can be a positive. But I have used AI for a lot of different things, like you. You know, we talked about in a green room for content creation, like words, but also for images and video. And I have found that, especially with the words with the text, it's really, if you're a marketer and not you're not putting in the right prompts, you're getting some horrible, terrible stuff to put out. So
Yeah.
it's just so important that if you are using it, that you are explaining and having this conversation with clients, with stakeholders about your journey of learning. And when you and I were talking, I love that you say you spent 5 to 8 hours a week or 5 to 10 hours a week learning about AI. And I think disclosing that, that's a pro to clients. Hey, it's new to all of us. We're working on it. We're taking a course. We got certified. We got, we did this. Then I see it as a positive, right? When we're constantly learning. And I have found I've been in business for 12 years that anytime I stay ahead of a trend like that and tell my clients, hey, this is a new thing out there. I'm learning. I'm taking a certification. That's a
Mhm.
positive.
Yeah. Well, and I would say it's also about disclosing to the people you're working with. So like in there's two bills out right now. One is HR 3831, and I wrote that down before we started because I keep forgetting that. But yeah, it's HR 3831 out of New York. Representative Torres put it up, and then you have the EU AI Act, both of which are going to try to force people to disclose what they're using. The one out of the EU is a little bit different because it classifies like weight of the subject in which it's being used. Um, but in general, they want people to just like fully disclose. And I would say that as of now, before legislation comes into play, just like on ethics, and this is just a personal opinion, I think that if
Sure.
you're doing work for somebody, you should tell them it's AI generated. If it's completely AI generated or AI assisted would be a better term for a lot of things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say that, if you are charging someone by the hour, letting them know like, hey, I do use AI, I'm fast. Like I can, work a lot of projects for you in a very short amount of time because I use AI. Now, if they're not comfortable with that, if they're like, and obviously there's like usage rights issues that a lot of larger companies are going to have problems with. Um, but I think it's really important to just be honest with the people that you are producing for of what you are doing and kind of assess the amount of risk they're willing to take.
I love that. I like that, the way of explaining that. And how about in education? You know, we talked about marketing, but there's a lot of people in education that are just so against it. And I just have to believe that it's not the tool. I'm an agile marketer, and one of the things that we teach and that is has an understanding is when you do agile is very different than when you're being agile. And I
Mm.
believe that with this AI, it's like it's one thing to have AI do everything for you and sit back and do nothing. But if you're using it and if you're creating it and if it's assisting you, you still need your brain and your strategy and your prompts and all of that to do the AI. So that was a comparison that I had is, anybody can type on a keyboard and get something to come out, but it needs a very smart, intuitive, creative person to have AI to bring the best out of AI.
Yeah. And then say back to your question on like the use of AI in like education. I would say there's two sides to that coin. I shared an article the other day and it talked about it's from like 2002 or something like that, and it was talking about how spell check is going to create a generation of dummies. But we all use spell check, and it has saved me in emails countless times. So kind of the same thing. Like, could it create a generation of dummies? Yes. Is it probably a little bit more equipped to create a generation of dummies? Absolutely. I would say that if we can get to a place where like disclosure might not be a thing, but ChatGPT is talking about like watermarking their output. If we can get to the place where there's like a constant watermark that teachers can check, I think that that's necessary. You're also like whether or not people are disclosing things, it's really not going to matter unless teachers have the ability to check. They'd be like, "Did you use AI in this?" And they'd be like, "No." And if they can't check, it doesn't really matter if they said yes or no.
There's already tools out there to throw the stuff in AI and say, was this AI generated, right? Yeah, I love that you just said that about spell check, because that also happened. My oldest two children were born in the late 1990s, and I can tell you they cannot read a map. They have used GPS their whole life, and they learned how to drive with the GPS in the car. And I'm of the generation where, we had a map book in the car, and we know north, south, east, west. And so are they not as smart as me? No, they just know that technology is going to be around, and they use it. They don't get lost. I don't get lost, but they don't get lost. And actually, funny part was the first time I went to New York City, after 20 years, the last time I had been there had been with maps, and I went to New York City in 2019, and I was lost because I didn't know how to navigate the city with a phone. So here I was, didn't know how to, didn't have the right things downloaded, didn't have the maps, and so I was the one who was lost because I didn't adapt. So there's a coin, there's a different side to that as well. So the pros of disclosing AI usage, we kind of talked about that, building that trust, maybe, maybe we could be perceived as forward thinking. How about the cons, right? Is there any concerns that revealing AI might undermine the perceived value of a service that we provide? Or maybe privacy concerns? Could it lead to misconceptions and unfounded fear about job losses? Let's talk about the cons if we talk about AI usage.
Yeah. Well, I see a ton of them.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that. But you are looking at a substantial like shift in like the efficiency of like general creative workers. You're talking about people who once, a project that once took a team now takes a person. You're talking about a lot of people basically shifting away from traditional work and everyone becomes uber competitive, and that can result in deflation of the value of your skill. Can result in a lot of things. What do you think?
No, absolutely. I'm not worried that what I do is going to be going away, but I'm worried that what I used to do is going to be going away. Like, I used to be a social media manager, and I would just implement a content strategy. And I think that is something that AI can take over a lot. But what I do is a higher level marketing strategy and social media strategy. And so it's that thinking part that you really can't outsource, and putting, getting all the data together. I guess AI can do some of that, but you still have to be creative and have those ideas. In order to put a strategy together, I look at an audit, I look at competitors analysis, I look at their industry, I look at the history of what they've done. There's so many different pieces. And then from that, I make decisions for their content strategy. But then the implementation part is where, we can probably save a lot of money and put different people on there. So am I worried about my own? Not necessarily. Am I worried about our industry? A little bit.
Well, like with the writer's strike right now, like a lot of like what they're striking about is AI. Like, people are giving their extra, like the extras were asked to basically give their, identity in perpetuity, like, and to be just regenerated using AI. And I feel like that is setting a dangerous precedent for, instead of just making work more efficient, you're deliberately deleting, hundreds and hundreds of jobs.
Yeah.
But is that the direction? It depends on where we are as a society.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you think that telling people that you use AI could be a marketing ploy? Like, could it be perceived as that? Oh, I kind of see that in some of our contemporaries, like I'm AI, certified, or, I'm taking this course and I'm teaching this course. Do you think that that's definitely happening?
I think it's all fear of missing out. Everyone is afraid to be left in the dust. People don't want to, go sell themselves and be asked the question, "What are you doing to stay on top of AI?" And you don't have an answer. I think it's all just trying to keep up with the Joneses a little bit, but I do think like my website is .ai instead of .com, and I wish I could say it's because I was forward thinking, but .com was taken. So .ai, but I do think that people hear it, and as of like right now, I think there's a little bit more mystique than you want behind it, but I do think it's going to become, late 2023, 2024. I think it's going to become one of those buzzwords, almost like sustainability in CPG products, or well, you could say AI in ad space right now. People are talking about AI driven ads. Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things that starts being applied to a lot of different aspects of life.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that and ads. I mean, think about Facebook ads. You're running it, or Google ads, and you're running that. If you can feed your best ads in a tool and say these were the best 4 or 5 or 10 ads in the last year, I need something about this topic. Create something that's similar to this in this same voice with these same parameters around it, but create something new. That's pretty powerful. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So how about retroactively? So now, say you're listening to this conversation, and say you're a marketer who hasn't told their clients or their boss or anybody. Is that something we should do retroactively, or should we start just be like, okay, I'm listening to John and Doreen. I didn't say anything, but I'm going to start talking about AI now. Is that a good move?
I mean, I'd say it's never too late. I'd say we're still early adopters. What is your take on that?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say that too. I was like, run, go do it now. Say today that you're listening to, somebody talking about AI and that you're ready to learn and you're going to do it. And, definitely, I would say you might not say, well, I've been using it for 6 months and I didn't tell you. I don't think that's probably the best way to go about it. But start being, and the word that keeps coming up to me in a lot of this content creation, I'm presenting on B2B business in a couple of months, and I'm my head's in creating a new session, and the word that keeps coming up is curiosity. It's something that AI cannot hold. They're holding information, but our minds are made to be curious, and if you can develop that piece, and to tell yourself, let's be curious, let's learn a little bit more, let's, open this hood and look under it and see what's in there. I think you will stay ahead if you stay curious. And I can see that you are, John, because you're learning and you're actively doing that. But if you're watching this, if you're listening to this and you're worried, because a lot of us are worried, right? Because you could be doing a job that could be replaced. But as John said earlier, don't be worried about AI taking over everything you do, but people who use AI taking over. So start using AI, but stay curious. Learn the why behind it. Learn new tools. Ask questions. Attend webinars, right? Learn more about this topic, because it's not going to go away. And if you listen to, and I love this, as AI really became big this spring, kind of this big push. John, you might have seen people digging really deep about having conversations with people from the 80s about the internet. And it's not, and phones, cell phones. Oh, we're not going to have a phone on us. How is that going to work, right? And here we are, like modern society, everybody has a phone in their pocket. Like, it's just so different. So if you're worried about this, or if you're thinking, oh, it's going to go away, it's not.
If it does, we've got bigger problems to worry about.
Yeah. So let's talk about ethical. We have just a couple minutes left, right? So ethical implications of using this, being authentic, leveraging versus leveraging efficiency. Do you foresee a future where everybody is going to be using AI and we don't have to disclose it anymore, that it's just going to be, this is it? What do you think, John?
Well, I think that, we're going to get to a point where it's going to be like makeup, or it's going to be auto-tune, or it's going to be like just general special effects. You don't have to explain to somebody that you've done any of those things. They just kind of naturally happen, and it eventually becomes the standard. I do think that, like, from an ethical perspective, you could kind of take the devil's advocate of saying, like, okay, if someone has like a learning disability, like people with dyslexia, should they be able to, plug in whatever they just wrote and have it be checked? Is that a problem? You have people who, could be absolute geniuses and they just struggle putting words together. They struggle writing. You really are unlocking kind of like maybe the people who are, I don't know, more confined in society when you allow them to create things that can express themselves in the way that they feel. So ethically, do I think that we should all have to disclose every time AI is written? Well, I think ChatGPT says that we own every output of ChatGPT, as far as copyright goes. And I'd say it depends in the bill that's coming out is really going to ask the question of whether or not you're using it to deceive people. Are you, I guess that would come down to intent, and whatever they decide that looks like is what it does.
Yeah.
But
so that's an interesting word that you use. That is it, and that's what's going to be in the bill about deceiving people. Is that's still how people look at it, right? Mm-hmm. That's still how people. I mean, do you feel like you're deceiving people when you're using AI?
No, I would say it also depends on the use case, right? So if I'm generating a piece of art, which you can do if you have a version, unless you're over $1 million on Discord or on Midjourney, you own the rights to these images. You could take them and start printing them and selling them today. With that being said, like, are people buying it from you because they think that you hand painted it? Or do they want it because of what it looks like? And then the skill that you provide is knowing how to extract it from generative AI. So it really does depend. Like, I don't know, if you're passing it off as something you hand did, I would have a problem with that. But also if you're passing it off as, the new skill is prompting. The new skill is telling generative AI what to give you. I don't know. What do you think? This is one of those things that's really, that dishonesty. I can tell you, I know what it feels like in your gut when you know that you're doing something wrong, right? I mean, I've lived a long life. There's been times in my life that I'm not proud of doing certain things. I have not felt that using AI. I've never felt in my gut I'm doing something wrong, or I shouldn't be using this, or I should have told a client, or I shouldn't. I think that the work I'm doing is better as I'm using AI tools, and I feel like I can do even a lot more. I think I love your idea of spending that much time, per week doing that, and I think that it's a shining example to others who are in either the marketing industry or a different industry. Go, quantify it. How many hours a week can you dedicate to something new? Because it's going to really up-level your career. It's like, if you want to own your own company, learn about leadership and, leading people, because that's how it's going to be. And if you want to grow in your career at this point,
I think if you don't learn about AI, you're going to be left behind, and the skills that we all have are going to evolve. I mean, even in the 12 years I've owned my business, I've done a lot of different things and I've landed in a space where I'm comfortable. But if you're sitting here and you've niched down to something that's really specific, you were talking about that earlier, John, if you're really specific, you're high level video editing that's very, very niche, and a tool comes along and can do that, that can be scary. So diversifying and learning, but you could be the person who uses that tool, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where I think the forward thinking is. Like, if you're worried, if you're listening to this and you're worried that your very niche skill is going to be replaced by AI, be the one that uses that AI tool. I think if there's anything that comes out of this, that is good. So, John, I've got one last question, and I know we're over time, but this is fascinating to me. So as we move into an increasingly AI integrated world, is there any advice you have for professionals navigating any of these questions? Anything that you can give that says, we're going to be okay?
Yeah. The first piece of advice I would have is listen to Strategy Talks. I think that this place is taught me so much. She brings on all of the best experts. This is something I try to commit time to every week. Very valuable. Highly recommend it. But also, I would say, just kind of like what Dorian said, is just stay hungry. You want to be looking for these skills. Don't be afraid to bring someone on for a consult. Most people I know who are in this space right now are doing their work on a consult basis. Don't be afraid to bring someone in to ask them how you could be improving processes, and don't pigeonhole this to content generation. AI is going to change everything from medical to it's gonna change every facet of a standard organization. Your COOs are going to use it just as much as your CMOs. So I would say don't think of it just in terms of content, but think of it, how could it make your life easier in other places. I hope that was an answer.
That's great advice, because we didn't talk about any other industry than marketing, but I just read that most interesting article about the CEOs and the C-suite of medical hospitals. They want to use it and they're using it, and then the doctors and nurses, the people that are in the field, are a little more worried about how the AI will be used, right? But we can use it in so many different ways. And I love that you just said, don't get pigeonholed in just thinking it's in marketing. It is everywhere, and it's continuing to grow, and it's going to be exponential growth. So I would love to have you back on next year and see where we are about AI. But if you want to learn anything, if you want to have a further discussion with John, connect with John. John, where is the best place for people to find you? What's your website? And where are you most active on social media?
Yeah, so I am active on social media on LinkedIn. John Demer. I'm also active on Instagram at the Rule of Seven Marketing. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, that's awesome. So if there's any follow-up questions, I'll pass them along to you. Thank you so much, everybody who was here live with us, and if you're watching on the replay, and those of you who listen to Strategy Talks, this was a new experiment of having a different kind of Strategy Talks, and I hope this is what maybe season 3 will look like. So this was kind of I really think that this is the future. Instead of telling people how things are, it's about, discussing, pros, cons, difference, opinions. And so, John, I appreciate your willingness to test this out with me today. Again, thank you so much for watching, for listening, and I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.